Welcome, folks, to another exciting opportunity for us to share a conversation here on the Squeaky Wheel. With me, as always, my very good friend, the President, Lawrence Gervais. Folks, I'm Ross Memphis Pambrun, the Captain. And as always, I'm excited, Lawrence, for our weekly conversation. Jump right into it. It's National Nurses Week. So, folks, if I know I mentioned this last week. If you haven't done your part, drive down the street, start yelling out for nurses, and if they come to the door, wave at them and say thank you for your time. I know this has been a unique few years, but I hope we are not remiss in thanking those who have been a strong part of our community.
Yeah, but tell them it's
craft.
But tell them it's a non-emergency, because if you're out yelling for a nurse, say there's nothing wrong, I swear.
Okay, yeah, you're right. All of a sudden, this sort of became actually a really terrible idea. So, yeah, I hope they don't cut that part out. Yeah, Leighton, you're going to want to leave that in. Lawrence, you absolutely make a really good point. It's also craft beer week, so don't drive down the street yelling out for people to bring you out craft beer.
Well, that's okay.
Maybe that's the best way in order to get one. I guess if you walk down the street and you're yelling it out, maybe that's a way to start that conversation. And also, folks, it's not too late. By the time you hear this, Mother's Day has come, and if you still haven't made that phone call to your mother, please pick up the phone, send her an email, send her some flowers. Not only is it never too late, it is something you should probably do just about every day. So from all of us here at the Squeaky Wheel, thank you for joining us for our conversation. As always, I want to say a big our thoughts and prayers are with the families in Ukraine and the challenges that are happening over there and any conflicts that are happening around the world. Lawrence, there was a terrible accident in Havana, and it's not that I often, we look to try and pick out, tragedies around the world. I know they can be everywhere, but this one, I've been to Havana, and it was a gas explosion, and those are very rare occurrences, I find. But here it was a national symbol, a national hotel, and a beautiful landmark, and a number of lives were lost. So just a tragedy for that community, and with an aging infrastructure, hopefully this is something they start to explore to protect for their community. But our thoughts are going along with them as well. Lawrence, let's jump into some Métis conversation. If you look at albertametis.com, which we often refer to, and we get great emails. And folks, if you don't get those emails, make sure you reach out to us, reach out to the Métis community. Alberta Métis Works, often conversation happening around business. There's children and family services, education scholarships, environment and climate change, harvesting, health, housing, youth, and truth and reconciliation. Lawrence, take me down a little bit of the road where we're at when it comes to the discussion on Constitution.
Well, we're certainly at that stage now where it'll be brought to the Assembly for us to vote whether it goes to ratification or not for the whole province. So hopefully we have some good discussions here at Tsuut'ina Nation in early August. And yeah, so, we're pretty excited to be discussing even self-government and where we're moving with that. So, I mean, that's in a nutshell. What I did was designate Ward Sutherland, former councillor for City of Calgary, and Grant Britton, who worked on the Canadian Constitution in Parliament, to help us down here in the region to be our representative. So we're pretty excited for them to sit there too.
Well, Ward is a fabulous character. We've had him on the show before, told great story about his Métis background. Now, can you help some of us and some of the listeners, just take us down a little bit? Anybody can attend the annual General Assembly.
Yeah.
Does everybody have to register? Is it just kind of you can show up?
Yeah, it's, well, you can't vote if you're not an MNA member. So you
right.
Get a little wristband where you get to vote on things, but anybody can sit and observe. But no, I mean, it's just drop in. There's other things to visit. We have vendors and all these other things, and our industry partners will be there too. Some of them won't be Métis, but they'll be behind the table, introducing their companies. But no, predominantly you will find it's a Métis thing. Yeah, and a lot of Métis activity. But and definitely anybody can observe. But the mics and the voting is usually reserved for the people who can vote.
And are these voters, would they be considered delegates or no? They are just, okay, so they are.
Yeah. So what we do is every day you check in for each region, and there's a registration. And I think they give you a little, I think $1 or $2 for being there, or whatever the honorarium is set. And then, you just go into the meeting and give you a binder, and good luck.
Yeah, I imagine along with that comes a bit of guidance. And this is the reason I enjoy this conversation, Lawrence, each week, because, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your candor. Your humors I find weak and challenging, but outside of that, you have a nice giggle, so that sort of helps frame the rest of your character. But we often talk with guests who are on our show, and a lot of people come with the idea of an imposter syndrome, right? Well, I'm only a little bit Métis. I'm not too sure how much Métis I am. And the reason I want to ask some of these questions is because, again, I'm still on this journey, though I've started to participate in a lot more of the events that are happening, especially the local events, or a lot of the regional events, but now I'm starting to attend more of the provincial events. I don't have that long history. Right. So I get to come from the idea of not having the experience. And you're well-versed, Lawrence, in the long history that you have within different social programs, whether that be through BC, the different education, your relationship with Rupert's Land and things like that. So the committees that you sit on, sometimes you may miss the fact that here the lesser known Métis, the less historically engaged Métis are still trying to learn. So I'm hoping that this is what's going to entice people to not feel afraid to come out and participate. Yeah.
So, I mean, the Saturday, August 6th is probably the most important day for voting, because that's when the resolutions are put on the floor. The Friday, the day before that, it's usually the reports from all the affiliates, including, treasurers and those things. But really the voting for any change really happens on the Saturday. And that's when it can either be a very high volatile place or a very low volatile place. You just never know.
Well, I look forward to attending this year and participating. And I knew coming up, I think, Lawrence, May 19th is our next business mixer. Yep. So there'll be conversation, I imagine, amongst the community about how we're going to prepare for and have conversation. Yeah,
so we're pretty excited and I presume you're playing music there on that day.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I've got some fun information to share with you. Yeah, this is the one that my band is playing at May 19th. So, folks, make sure you jump on board. Reach out to
Ashley,
to us through our office.
Yeah,
and reach out to Ashley.
Yeah, Ashley Camponi will be accepting RSVPs, because we still have to RSVP, just because it's not a place that can accommodate hundreds of people. So we're very limited.
Email communitylead@mayt3.org, I think is our email.
That's right.
And just call our office if you have any questions, but we'd love to still have you to attend. Yeah. Lawrence, let's jump into a couple things I'm just curious to pick your mind about. You may or may not have read about some of these things, but down in Ontario, there was a Uber driver who had given a racist rant to this based on the couple that was in the back. And the woman who took exception to it sent the information off to Uber saying, look, here's this video. This was completely inappropriate. This was not a prepared occurrence. And a week later, she gets a bill for $282 on her credit card for damages to the vehicle. Huh. Like, is there no responsibility? And it seems like she's reached out. If she finally had to take it to the level of sort of go public, that here is my concerns. Should there be a timeline? Is there an expectation? Is this just reputational effect when it comes to these occurrences? Like it's a very unjustified allowance when there's no action taken, in these situations.
Well, no offense to Uber or things like that, and certainly it's another company that wants to come in and make money, and we know why the taxi drivers and the unionized taxi drivers were upset when Uber was coming in. And they brought up the idea of control. Like, well, how was everything controlled? If something goes bad, like if you complain about things or whatever, does it just get fluffed off? And it's like skip the dishes. If you have a problem there with your food, you still get the food. Your complaint, who knows where it goes, right?
Well, actually, that's a really good point, right? There's no oversight. There's no body that can be part of governing the actions and the responsibilities of the people who are involved. It just ends up being a transaction. And maybe that's sometimes the trouble with a capitalist approach. The end, I get it. Dollars and cents will matter because this person may not decide to use Uber anymore. And sometimes that's how you use your dollars to vote. But I think it's appropriate what this individual did of bringing forward here this issue, and yet it didn't seem to be resolved. So we have to do more within our community.
Or, make it mandatory that they have cameras inside their units, and I think what was that situation where that guy came from Airdrie and he was really racist towards the driver? He ended up losing his job and everything. But the taxi driver had, a camera and microphone inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Which was responsible. Yeah. I mean, I do think that you should have to be responsible and say, hey, just so you know, there is a recording that's happening here. So,
but then people don't like to be recorded, so there's always that type of thing. But, there should be, once you get in, signs made aware that.
Right. Well, I have that philosophy that at the moment I leave my house, there's cameras everywhere. And you have to be very cognizant of the fact that you could be recorded for anything that you do.
Yeah, we're staring at a camera right now and being recorded.
Folks, for those of you who aren't watching and who are just listening, yes, behind Lawrence is just a beautiful array of pictures, a beautiful guitar. You can see the Métis sash hanging there. The Squeaky Wheel sign is prominent and prevalent. Behind me, Lawrence, throw it out.
What?
Who's winning back there?
I thought somebody threw up on that shirt or something. Kidding.
That, folks, behind me is the Edmonton Oilers, their orange jersey. It is shining like a ray of sun behind me with a recent win over the Los Angeles Kings. I think it was 8-2. The last two games they've won by 6 goals. Now, I'm not going to say anything. I'm excited. We're having a great playoff season. I know, folks, I'm a big fan of the Calgary Flames. I'm excited for everybody in this province, and I don't even want to think too far ahead as to how exciting it could be if our two teams were playing each other.
Well, I think, the Oilers have amped up quite a bit with the addition of Evander Kane, right? And though everyone's pretty excited about that, the goalie, he's a little 50-50, but when he's on his game, he's pretty good, definitely. He's
pretty good, yeah. Well, and Evander scored 2 goals in each of the last 2 games, and I think it's pretty rare for an Oiler to have done that in a long time. So, big shout out to him. Just to share, the reason I may sound a little bit off, folks, is yes, I've finally gone down the COVID highway, and it was a tough, I think this is only maybe day 5, where I'm really starting to feel like I'm gaining some strength. I was wiped out. I was just beat up. I was just dehydrated and exhausted. Boy, it was a struggle, and you could still hear it in my voice with the coughs that still come on. But I like to think that our vaccination plan has, ensured that I didn't get, wasn't any worse off. But Lawrence, it is starting to feel as though I'm making a comeback.
Well, it's nice for you to be back. Thank God I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. But we're definitely going to burn that mic, Leighton.
Yes, folks, all the equipment in my room will be destroyed after this. Oh, Lawrence, that did make me laugh. Leighton, don't burn it down. I'm sure we could just clean this. But one other thing that I really want to share that was exciting, and just before I went down this journey, was I had a song on the radio, folks. I fired off my song Game 7 Man to 88.1 Windspeaker Radio. 20 minutes later, I got an email back saying, this song has put the biggest, stupidest grin on my face. We have got to play this on our show. And they called me the next day and said, listen, would you come in for an interview? 30 minutes interview about this song. And then that day they put it on the radio and put clips of our conversation. And then the full thing is available on CJWE down here in Calgary. You can listen to the whole, or if you go to our website, Memphis and the Grande with an E.ca. So Lawrence, you've been a strong part. You've been a strong proponent of me as a Métis musician. I had so much fun. I can't say thank you enough. You really do a lot to promote a lot of the families down here that play music, and you include us in the Metis events, our kitchen parties and things like that. Once again, I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I know I can always do better. We can all do better. But I try to get as much as musicians and artists that I know of. We did an Excel spreadsheet, when I first started all this, and so we had at least the Métis artists there and as guests possibly for Squeaky, and then it's just COVID got worse and worse and worse over these years, but we're hoping we can use that list for some in-person performances right on Squeaky Wheel. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that.
Yes. We will get that music in there. We have the beautiful music of our friend Alex Kustarak, who brings us in and part of our show every time. Yes, thank you so very much, Lawrence. Lawrence, let's jump into the conversation. So Prince Edward Island, Confederation Bridge. Mm-hmm. Now, that was a pretty big deal when we connected PEI to Canada. Now there's a conversation about changing the name of the bridge. Now, does it surprise you that may be occurring?
It is a little surprising. Confederation is what it was, definitely.
Yeah.
The actions behind it, definitely a no-no for Indigenous perspective.
Yes.
But if you take everybody's perspective of what that means, a lot of people don't really know too much because it's not taught in the early ages of school, let alone the high school area, what Confederation means.
Right. And, is Confederation an exact tie-in to colonialism, or is it, can those two ideas be separated? At what point do we have some allowance? But they're looking at, I think it's the Indigenous community in PEI, talk about the history of the bridge. And there was a Mi'kmaq man in the First Nation in New Brunswick. And I think they want to change the name to, I did have this, Epictwick. The name for PEI, it means cradled on the waves.
That's kind of
so
nice.
I really think that's beautiful. Maybe what we should be doing, maybe one of the approaches as we look to name something is we celebrate a combination, right? It's Confederation Bridge with a historic tie to the community of and including this name. Maybe that's a nice way. And that speaks to our conversation about if we look back at what we would, this could almost be not aged. I think it was only, was it 20 years ago that this bridge went in? But if we look back at old statues and say, well, here's a few things that this person did wrong. Okay, how can we tie that back? How can we create awareness and tie that to the community? So I'm not opposed to this, but I also want to be conscious of, what role did this bridge have in Canada?
Yeah, exactly. And Confederation was pretty much Parliament actions to achieve their goals, right? And whether it was Western Canada or, certainly in that area, there was always these attempts and policies made to achieve the Confederate policy, and that's the vision of Canada.
And I support the idea of exploring how there was a relationship with that community, but also it's not like that community was the one building the bridge. This was part of our confederation. If we had torn down a historic Indigenous bridge in order to replace it with a new colonial bridge, I would hate the idea of not recognizing that area, not recognizing the history of it. But if this is just something new, I'm not opposed to the idea of, well, we can just give it a name.
Yeah, I mean, renaming the bridge is fine, as long as there's a plaque beside it or some type of lesson included in that.
How about this? So, folks, if you're listening out there, if you know anybody regarding naming the bridge, consider naming it after the number one rated most highly likely to be the top Métis conversation program out there. We should probably call it the Squeaky Wheel Conversation Bridge. So, folks, throw that out there to call your elected officials, call your friends, start a viral campaign to try and get the bridge changed to Lawrence and Ross's Good Time Squeaky Wheel Bridge.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't go on a bridge that was named Squeaky, just so you know. But
Yeah, okay, good point. We should tie our name to something that is more like, well, I don't even know if I'd want to get on a Ferris wheel. That was kind of started to squeak either. Lawrence, we're going to have a hard time. Whatever we're going to get our name on, it's going to have to be rock solid so that we can, it's just a rock. Somewhere there's going to be a rock.
Yeah.
Pretty much undamageable. That's going to be the squeaky wheel. Well, I guess that's still not a terrible thing.
Well, I mean, when you're pulling an RV or something like that and it starts to squeak and you're always looking behind you, like, is it still there? Right? You keep going.
Set the tone off, fellas. It's that time of the show. It is Indigenous Plant Conversation. Lawrence, take us through. What do you got for us today?
Well, I have, which probably everyone have seen, certainly out on the prairies or near cattle, are these interesting things called puffballs. Now, the puffballs are often found in growing in pastures or wild land in Alberta. And they look like a cluster of balls growing on the ground. They grow rapidly, and some of them are very big. They're very spongy, like white balls. But when mature, they go to a brown color, and there's a powder-like substance in them. So if you squeeze them, you see that brown sort of air come out of them. They called it devil's snuff in the old days. And animals are often treated if you receive a barbed wire cut, you put it on the cattle, and when they get poked and it heals. And you can also use it on humans. So it stops bleeding immediately, that type of thing, if you come across these things, if you're hurt.
So you're referring to where it's like a fungi.
Yeah, absolutely. It grows on the ground, yeah.
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 Yeah. Oh, okay. Huh. So I've taught myself historically not to eat anything that I have absolutely no familiarity with. In fact, there really aren't any mushrooms that I'm willing to risk it.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that I can just pick this up and rub it on my skin if I have some kind of an issue?
But I'm not suggesting you eat it, but definitely.
Gotcha.
But if you have a cut in your mouth, I'd maybe reconsider. But if it's on your leg or something.
That's usually never been my approach, but I will start looking for them. Well, thank you, Lawrence, for sharing that with the Indigenous Plant Hour. Jeopardy champion Mateo Roach lost. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, and even the Prime Minister threw out a congratulations, who has done so well. And I mean, she made the Tournament of Champions. She's done a fabulous job for Canada. Really represented 23-year-olds, and even threw a shot out at the, in a sense, at the community of trying to purchase a home in Ontario and Toronto, because the fact that she's like, I never would have been able to afford a home unless I won essentially 23 rounds on Jeopardy. So if that's what it takes in order to be able to afford a home in Toronto, folks, you better bone up on your trivia right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I lived in Toronto. It's a very expensive place. But back then I was, in the ties of the arts and making a fairly decent salary, but yeah.
Staying downtown, and I remember you commented the few of the places where you lived. Yes, I'm sure it was a challenge to have to stare at the beautiful water line where you were living.
Yeah, I was in my 20s and living right near Queen Street and young, and yeah, it is what it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, pretty cool. You had a pretty lucky opportunity for that. Not that you didn't work for it, Lawrence. I will admit, you can see that picture behind you. You worked hard. It's not, and your still connection with the ballet community here still shows that you step up and represent.
Yeah, we were at Cinderella last weekend, and the little girl, and going around, and Alberta Ballet School were coming around to me asking me for donations. I said, look, I'm an alumni, okay? I think I've donated enough. No, just kidding.
Yes, they should send some money your way.
No, good kids. And then, I talked to some of the dance moms of the old days, even run into some of them. So, yeah, it's a very interesting time when you're there and people recognize you and you get to talk to everybody in the audience. But it was a good show. It was a great show.
Can you pick out errors in a dance like that? Like, do you see stuff and go, oof, missed that?
Usually in a professional show like that, it happens maybe every 10 minutes. You see something, but
yeah, just a pretty small, like, is it just a step or somebody misses a position on a jump.
Yeah. Or
what do you
people
see?
out of line, or, people, just, aren't.
Oh, okay.
The real technical side, because you're always looking for line and those things in the body. And sometimes that's, as dancers, you're trying to achieve that. The regular audience doesn't notice that bit. But if you're been in that environment for so long, that's what you're doing. And that's why you have danced in front of mirrors, always trying to achieve those perfect lines in the arms and the legs, right? So.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, we'll have to go to a show together, because I'd like you to sort of point out where you would look for an inconsistency. Not that I'm looking for that, but I'm always impressed when people who have that skill set can find that.
Yeah.
Like when you watch hockey and you see somebody where the puck doesn't hit the tape right on their stick, might hit him in the foot. That's a bad pass.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare that you're trying to hit somebody in the skate, but sometimes you do. And you can tell whether or not that was a planned pass or just a poor pass.
And I can always tell when I watch a choreographer whether they've have serious classical ballet training or they don't. Right? It's very cut and dry when you have that experience. You know who's actually been trained and who hasn't.
Oof. Lawrence, you have a long history, and it's always impresses me. May 10th, folks, there's a registration drive in Wabasca. May 11th, High Prairie. So if you're listening to our show, make sure you get out. Make sure you tell your families. For those of you who haven't gone and who may have a family history but haven't applied for your card. Again, Lawrence and I talk all the time about all the opportunities that are available within the Métis community. Make sure you reach out to those different groups. Big shout out to the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation in Brandon, Manitoba. They recently had they're reintegrating bison back into their community, and they've had their 8th calf that is a white bison to be born in the First Nation community. And that calf is, these white bison are often quite spiritual towards the community. So pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. I always like to bring up these kind of little things that pop up within the community. Lawrence, Cassidy Karen is coming to town.
Yes.
Are you getting nervous?
Yeah, she might fire me. No, just kidding. Yeah,
my fear is she's going to hire you.
Yeah, I don't think she can do that. But President Caron, yes, for the Métis National Congress is coming. We're sitting on a panel together with Richard Pichet and Sharon Sawchuk, and we're pretty excited to be a part of this large event here in May, and and meeting a lot of people. It's going to be a huge conference, so yeah, we're pretty excited about it.
Lawrence, you connect a lot of big deals with a lot of other big deals. Yes, Mr. Richard Pichet is a very good friend of mine. I'm very excited. He sits in a lot of these conversations. I think he's the right man for the job. Let's close our conversation, Lawrence, on at what point does it become unreasonable that Elon Musk can own just about everything? Doesn't own Facebook, but if he ends up buying Twitter, where does it begin and end with who controls information?
It's a very good question.
Is this healthy?
Yeah. Because we know he has a little bit of far right on his politics, so we're kind of interested to see what's going to go on with Twitter. And why is his intent to own it? Is it for future things that he has, or, because it kind of came out of the blue that he wanted it, and then he ended up taking over the board and then getting it, and now he has it. So now what, right?
Yeah. Well, and you read his tweets, his jokes and such. Ooh, the next thing you know, he's going to solve the McDonald's ice cream crisis. Yeah, right. His jokes or his comments are that he's sort of buying the biggest of everything.
Yeah.
And or can solve all of these problems. I hope he continues to do good. I hope it becomes a vessel for continued conversation. Folks, this is what the Squeaky Wheel is all about, is having conversation, is bringing the people's awareness to available products, the idea of social connection, and in our case, a lot of conversation from the Métis community. And how do we continue to foster positive conversation within the Indigenous community and bring spirituality into our families and into our social connections. So from all of us here at the Squeaky Wheel, Lawrence, close us out.
Yeah, so I want to say thank you today. Maybe Elon Musk will buy ballet or the Oilers, something we're interested in.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Squeaky Wheel.
We buy the Squeaky Wheel. No, we're way too much money. But no, I want to thank everybody and glad to see Ross back. He giggles too, as you can see. He's like a gaggle almost. Not right now because he's sick, but it'll be back to a giggle, and we're looking excited to doing things hopefully in person one day. And we're glad that he's on the mend.
Folks, from all of us here at the Squeaky Wheel, continue to just subscribe to us. Send us any of your information or updates. Yes, we do have some new people who are going to be coming on board our show here pretty soon that are going to help us with scheduling some of our guests, as we're all trying to get through and navigate still sometimes the allowances when it comes to this COVID landscape. As long as you stay strong, folks, we're going to stay strong for you. So from Leighton and Devin behind the scenes, from Lawrence and I, keep the wheel squeaking and stay safe. The Squeaky Wheel is brought to you by the Squeaky Wheel Company, co-hosted by the President, Lawrence Gervais, Memphis Region 3, and the Captain, Ross, Memphis, Pambrun. Our program is broadcast from Calgary, in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We also acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Grande, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. You can always reach us for comment about our programming by email at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca or find us on our website, www.squeakywheel.ca, and our socials. For our comments, it is our focus to recognize all of our First Nations and Indigenous friends, share connection with Métis settlements, and listen to and show respect to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. Here at the Squeaky Wheel, we give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for her time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. From all of us at the Squeaky Wheel, Tansi.